can probably hang on a little longer. All right, we'll go ahead and call the April 16th May 16th work session agenda to order. Roll call, please.
Yes.
Here.
Here, present.
All right, we're here to continue the discussion on the budget. I believe the last time we primarily focused on the income, and I believe this time the goal was to focus on the expenses. Is that correct? Anybody have any?
A little bit, Mr. Vice Mayor, if it please the council, I'd be happy to kind of walk you through what we've done so far, and then that way it'll kind of set up for what you need to kind of ask and then, or continue to answer, and then after that, you can then take a look at the line item if you'd want to, although we're going to be pretty much prepared to kind of answer any general questions. I don't think it would
Go ahead,
be a
Brian.
worthwhile exercise to go line by line by any means. If you look at, and right now I actually defer to Councilman Passanello if he wants to bring up anything else with regard to this, but the first issue at hand was LEOS for the PD. The council, after brief discussion, had approved the LEOS benefit to be added into the budget. The benefit is currently factored into the spreadsheet that has the proposed budget. Councilman Passanello had raised some concerns with and would like to discuss the added benefit in greater detail. The details of the benefit will be scheduled prior to the next budget work session, which was held this afternoon at 3:30. I believe we answered a good bit of his questions, but if you all would like to bring up any other additional questions, I know either our town clerk, Jen Preline, our treasurer, Sherry Wilson, or our chief, Noble, will be happy to answer any additional questions.
Well, I'll jump in and say that I think we should wait to have the mayor here as well to have that discussion. But I got a lot of good information. Let me see if I can synthesize it very quickly. It's basically once you elect to go into the program, you're in. It's not being half pregnant. You're there all the way. The other thing is that the number is based on the entire payroll for the town, not just the police officers. So essentially, it's costing a little bit more. Oh, well, actually, we're going to make an adjustment to the budget line item, I think, right? We're going to shift that over to the PD, that number, because it's based on a multiplier that comes out every 2 years. So just wanted to make sure everybody's eyes wide open, understands this is a factor or a multiplier that's calculated every 2 years. And there's a risk there that it could go up, but then again, it could go down, depending on their calculations. So those are some of the things that I needed to understand a little bit better. So I had a good discussion about it. So that's where I'm at.
And what is the next year's budget for this?
It is, if I remember right, it was close to, well, if it's the 1.70, it was closer to 33. If it's the 1.85, it's closer to 38. Is that right?
In addition.
Yeah, in addition. 38K. 33K for 1.7.
35K.
Roughly, average.
Roughly in the area. And that would be every year from here on out.
To eternity.
But again, as council was briefed and seemed to agree to, it's the right thing to do.
Right. Well,
But we need to know what all the ramifications.
exactly. You know, and I had asked about legacy costs and things like that. So I got my questions answered, just making sure we're all understanding where the numbers are and where the numbers are going to be going forward. But I will say that Eric, our chief, made a very compelling argument relative to the triad and his approach to bringing the police department up to the level that's expected of in this area in Northern Virginia or anywhere. And essentially, if I get this right, Chief, it has to do with the number one, certification. Number two, it has to do with the retirement. So it puts everybody on a competitive level, retention and competition for future employees of a caliber that we would expect that the chief would expect. And the third level, or the third leg of the triad would be the, if I get it right, the upward mobility, more or less, something.
Some way within the confines of a small agency to provide career advancement. And unlike a traditional agency where, and particularly a larger one, you can go be a detective or go be a canine officer or a SWAT officer, you don't have those capacities in the town of Haymarket. But nonetheless, there are certifications and qualifications that you can provide to officers to make their job here more rewarding and a richer, fuller experience over the course of what you want to be a long career. And two brief examples that I mentioned to Councilmember Passanello was getting one or several officers motor carrier qualified, because there are and will always be a tremendous amount of motor carrier traffic coming through town, and it would behoove us to be in a position to inspect them for safety occasionally. And the second position also would be an ID tech, a person capable of, at a basic level, processing crime scenes, which right now we rely on Prince William County 100%. But those are sort of career advancement opportunities, again, ways to enrich your career where you serve a dual purpose. Number one, providing services to the town, but also assisting retention, because now you're giving them something to aim for. But again, you're making the workday more enriching, more rewarding.
Thank you, Eric.
I have one question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is there a vesting lapse at all, or once we buy into this, we're in?
We're in.
Okay.
They can't be half pregnant.
Huh?
Can't be half pregnant.
And
No, but
That's
just
The-
like
the
with
one-
retirement, you have a certain 5 years and then you're vested.
well, there is that, yes.
Right.
But they're already VRS employees. The
So-
delineator would be whether or not they are a Group 1 or Group 2 employee.
Okay.
And really, for all intents and purposes, the only differences are going to be those who have come into the system later. They're going to have a much wider period of time that their average salary is determined. So
Right.
lower salaries are going to be included in that. And then how their COLAs are calculated are a little bit different also than the Tier 1 employees.
Okay. Thank you.
And just one more thing to share. One of the questions I had was, if we were to do an increase, a salary increase versus this in the first year, what would it be comparable to? And so the LEOS increase would be around 8.7%. So just so everybody's got their eyes wide open and know where we're heading here.
Sir, but would that be a salary increase across the board, or would this just be for PD?
This is just PD,
And that 8% is calculated just for PD?
just for PD.
But you mentioned something earlier that they look at the entire staff.
That's right. Based on the entire payroll. Would somebody like to explain that a little bit deeply?
The census, the quote to us, or the actuarial study, is based on the entire payroll, and that's essentially how they fund the retirement. They fund the retirement by collecting on the entire census, but paying the benefit only to law enforcement sworn officers. And that's standard for everybody in VRS that has the LEOs. And yes, that's the factor.
And there's nothing that's available that would, where you would use the same pool, the same study, but offer something to the staff. But there's nothing like this that applies to non-law enforcement officers.
There are other defined contribution plans, VRS being a defined benefit. We could look at defined contributions, but we would still have to offer that across the board. So it couldn't be we offer the LEOS for the public safety and then offer a different benefit to the rest of the employees. It would still have to be offered to all the employees.
Would this number increase the more our payroll increases?
Yes, sir.
I can't seem to find the connection between the entire payroll and the layoffs and the law enforcement.
Can I try and explain?
Please.
So if you had, say, where Chief came from, the Loudoun Sheriff's Office, there are many civilian employees in there that are not law enforcement.
Okay.
So it's their whole, that's how they do it. So we're a little bit different in a sense because we are a town and we're a little bit separate, but it's just their policy that it would be civilian as well as law enforcement. Is that a good?
Yeah, I guess 2 points. I would reaffirm that it's a funding mechanism, but it's a funding mechanism based on the idea, in their terms, that this is hazardous duty pay. You know, this is acknowledgement that both law enforcement, and this is the same plan that firefighters operate under, but that law enforcement and fighting fires are inherently dangerous activities that have a whole host of risks associated with it, both near and long term. And so I would agree that it really is a funding mechanism, or maybe equally so, a way to fund the benefit fairly, I guess, because it's consistent. It's here's your payroll, here's what we're going to charge as a greater percentage of your total payroll, without having to calculate ratio with sworn personnel to non-sworn personnel or other factors that might make that process so complicated and convoluted they simply can't find a funding mechanism.
In my mind, I'm missing a piece of the puzzle. Is it just me? I just don't see where, I'm totally in support of the LEOS program offering this package as a part of the retirement for the police officers. I just have a hard time trying to connect the entire payroll with the 32, 35,000 that we would pay out approximately. And if our staff increases, that amount increases. I just don't see the connection between non-law enforcement and law enforcement if this is only benefiting the law enforcement.
When they do perform the actuarial study, of course they look at retirement age, how many sworn officers there are, and of course the balance between the non-sworn is what offset. Had we been a little more lopsided, your rate would be much higher. Say we had 10 sworn officers and 3 or 4 non, your rate would be much higher. So yeah, like Eric said, this is a funding mechanism. This is how they fund it, by collecting on the entire census.
And that's part of the statute, right? Is there a statute that underrides that or undergirds that?
Correct, and that it's just, what happened was we engaged in an actuarial study with VRS in March or February, so we could find out this rate. So independent accounting firm performed the study, but yes, it is based on that.
Is it fair to say, and I'm in VRS as a public school teacher, I think they do kind of a similar thing, because if you look at what's deducted out of your payroll, your leave earnings statement, and you see what goes into your retirement, the number's a lot lower. And when I called VRS to inquire about it, their answer to me was, we're taking some of your money to fund the people who are retiring now with the hopes that people that are coming behind you will help fund your retirement. So really, when you get the money deducted out of your paycheck, it's not like some other place. You're basically, it's cash flow. So it sounds like to me it's the same deal with the VRS.
Every jurisdiction that is a LEOS offers the hazardous duty. Every employee of that jurisdiction is paying the rate for hazardous. Now, it's not, I take that back, the employer, this is the employer's portion. The employee contribution is 5%. That's set, that won't change anytime soon.
Right.
So this is just the employer side. All employees of the town contribute 5%. So your 5%, which is what, we don't have a choice. We can't go up, we can't go down.
Right.
is definitely going to yours. It's the,
It's what the matching contribution,
Right.
it really doesn't go to you, it goes to the general retirement pool.
correct.
So really, even though it's showing as a benefit to you on your leave earnings statement, it's really a benefit to the VRS at large.
At large,
Correct.
including the Valors, which is the Virginia State Police. It's all a factor. I have the study if you'd like to look at it. It's very thick.
Not to mention the 4 highest paid employees in the Commonwealth are the top 4 people at the VRS, but that's a conversation for another day.
Chief, is this the best program out there?
I would suggest that unless you were willing to do something comparable to Arlington County or Fairfax County and create your own retirement plan, it's really the only option out there. The benchmark for me would be really what are your comparators doing? And for every agency I've been exposed to, whether large or small, if indeed they are a VRS agency, they're a LEOS agency. Now, there certainly is variance in whether they recognize a 1.7 multiplier or they bought up into a 1.85 multiplier. But nonetheless, to an agency, they are all LEOS supplemented. Again, I simply don't know an agency that doesn't do that. And again, for recognition of issues global and practical at home.
It's a fact of life.
Thank you, sir.
Have we made a determination which multiplier we're going with?
That's a very good question. Somebody,
It would be my recommendation to use the 1.7 multiplier. And again, if you go up to 1.85, you can't go back.
Gotcha.
You can always move up in the future should you choose, but again, I think it would be fiscally prudent to do the 1.7 multiplier.
Okay.
and that's what's in the budget, the 1.85. So that would reduce it somewhat for the
About
1.7.
$5,000.
Right,
This is strictly retirement,
retirement.
strictly. There's no insurance that's attached to it or anything like that.
You're in it to win it.
And just so you know, this is on the base salaries. This is not applicable to overtime, part-time, straight time over 80. It's on base salaries, so that it it'll be a known factor each year.
For 2 years.
Right.
For 2 years. And then when will they redo the calculations?
So we just got the next 2 years, so in March of 2018, I'll know the FY 19-20 numbers.
Okay.
I might suggest we move on so we don't spend all the time on one item.
That we've already discussed.
Yes.
So,
Point taken.
taking that cue there, Mr. Vice Mayor, if you move down through the matrix, next is the creation of the capital budgets. Council agreed that we would separate out our general fund budget and our capital budget, so that was one thing we reached agreement on. With PC and ARB, the staff made just more of a quandary to council. Council agreed that for now, let's keep the membership at 7 members. We talked also about future employee contributions, and basically what the council reached at the last budget work session was that we agreed to keep the benefits as they currently stand, but start to investigate a process into employee benefit contributions in the coming fiscal year. Council also discussed the possibility of having new employees begin contributing health benefits, but will make a final determination from findings with regard to all employee contribution to benefits. Raise and bonus program, council did not commit to anything formally, but in general came to the consensus that they would revisit this issue mid-budget year next fiscal year. Alternative PC ARB pay structure. Council agreed that would not raise or make any changes to the current rate structure for the council or appointed bodies of the county government. With regard to revenue, staff brought up some points and issues of potential areas you may want to consider. Ultimately, council agreed to remain tax neutral for the upcoming fiscal year. And that really kind of carries us through pretty much the rest of our conversation at night. That's kind of where we left off at the last budget work session. However, what I'd say is if for the most part you are wishing to remain tax neutral, I don't know if it'd be worth the, you certainly can have a dialogue, but staff was proposing a couple of different other alternatives. One would be the reinstatement of the personal property tax, which currently there's a moratorium on. Staff also recommended the possible consideration of a solid waste assessment collection. This would basically be an assessment on to help cover the trash pickup. These are not things that we're saying you have to do, but we're just saying these are other things that we, members of other jurisdictions, do currently. Some jurisdictions are collecting these different fees. We're not saying you have to do that, but we are saying that it is a consideration for you to make. And then the other would be reinstating or creating an annual motor vehicle license fee, which basically be your decal fee. Many jurisdictions do have this. Most jurisdictions have gone to permanent decals, but they have not. They no longer issue a decal. That's up to the jurisdiction whether or not they want to do it. But what we currently do is our current practice is you get one decal, and that's your decal until you get a new vehicle. Once you get a new vehicle, you have to renew at the same $15 rate. Sorry, $15 rate, and then that's your permanent decal for it. It's a one-time charge. So what the theory is here is rather than making that a one-time charge, it would be an annual charge. However, due to the last conversation, like I said, council didn't discuss this, but if you're going to stay tax neutral, these would be areas.
Options.
Yeah, options.
One thing on a tax neutral, we're talking tax neutral as far as the tax rate staying the same, which means that people would still pay a little bit more because of the assessments going up?
No, as it stands, we would have to advertise that as a tax increase. So to remain tax neutral, you have to lower your tax rate down to, was it 0.126? So that will
And
keep you at the neutral rate.
And I thought we talked about that at the last
You
meeting.
left early.
Oh, that's right, you left early, I'm sorry. But we did, we talked about it at the last meeting. We didn't feel it was a good idea, and correct me, jump in everybody, for $6,000 to go through that process. So frankly, we want to make it the same going forward, at least for this fiscal year.
And all of these proposed beep pole repair personal business stuff?
The matrix that's in front of you, really only thing was added was the fourth column, which basically gave you an update of where you were. These numbers do not reflect the most current numbers. When we say tax neutral, that means whatever that tax rate is currently is what it will be advertised at.
Okay.
Which we're hoping to come out of this meeting with the ability to advertise the budget.
Let me ask a question for clarity, process-wise. So we would have, if we wanted to make a change, and I'm not advocating it, but if we wanted to make a change and add in a solid waste or some other thing, could we do that mid-year, or would we have to wait until the end of the year and have it part of a new budget? Just,
By referendum.
maybe that's something, just, okay.
It is a market precedent. Typically, I think you would have some options with regard to doing as a referendum.
I've never heard of it.
Right.
So it would be
Okay.
All of it would also be how it's titled. I don't think you could call it a tax per se. So I think we'd have to defer, staff would have to defer to our attorney on this to get you a better answer, but we can
And
ask.
if we are going to do that, this would be the best time to do it, so that preparation,
Right.
we have that,
Yeah.
the 6-month period to prepare for it.
I agree, but, just thinking ahead.
Mr. Manager, so if we use the annual motor vehicle license fee, you take 15 times 695, that would generate 10,425, because currently it's 15, correct?
Yes. But currently it's 15 one time.
Right, but I'm saying, if we did it annually, we would keep it at 15?
Yeah, keeping it at $15, is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm saying, on this matrix, it's showing it is showing 25. So is the suggestion we charge 25 or we charge 15, which is the current one-time fee, and make that 15 an annual fee?
Only that 24. Is that
I tried to take my decal off, but it just didn't work.
Oh, okay.
25.
$24 is what Prince William County.
That's why we
charge. No,
They still charge the fee.
typically, I'm almost positive this, how this, it comes through their personal property tax and stuff on your personal property tax bill. Actually, always make sure you check it if you're a resident of the town, because you shouldn't be paying that decal
No,
fee.
no,
But-
we're not.
But a lot of times they have a decal fee on that personal property tax, even though. Yeah, it's on the first half of the year.
Prince William County has a $24 per year
Decal fee. For a decal, you don't.
But you don't get a decal.
per vehicle. Could someone explain to me the surrounding jurisdiction term? What are some comparables? Loudoun County?
I'm in Warren County. I pay $30 a vehicle
Per year?
per year.
Warren?
Yes.
That's country.
It's either 25 or 30.
How about towns?
Alexandria?
Warrenton, my son pays, I think, 15
Per year.
per year.
Manassas City?
Have to check.
Not sure. We can certainly look into it.
I would, my only caution on that would be, I would think you'd want to look at the entire picture.
Right.
And what a resident would pay. And then you can do a comparison.
Yes.
Just standalone,
Yes.
doesn't make,
I want to thank the staff for the recommendation. It's something definitely that we should look into. But we need proper information.
okay.
Yes, sir.
When we eliminated that tax in our budget discussions, we felt that there wasn't a whole lot of revenue, but there was a whole lot of more ill will and a lot of staff time chasing it down.
That was
making
the
sure
personal
people
property
paid it.
tax.
Well, this was also, I believe, when we had discussed, it was just an opportunity to kind of give back to the town that, hey, we're not going to make you pay for this sticker anymore, and because it was a yearly charge before then. So it's just,
Yes.
if you're going to have a lot of memories out there. So I think you'll have to justify it and, be careful in how you communicate that.
Right, the reason we did that is it's when Prince William County did away with issuing the decals. It's pretty much statewide, I would guess around 2008, 7, something like that. So if we were considering doing away with it, Prince William told us they would come in and assess the town residents if we had done away with it completely. So we decided to go with the permanent decal and collect the $15 to, reimburse for the cost of the decals, and went with it permanent, and that protected the residents from paying the Prince William County fee. And we had completely we put a moratorium on the personal property tax. It was really time and staff consuming. It rendered about $25,000 a year annual tax revenue, and we put a moratorium on that in 2005. So we have eliminated several.
When you look at decals or you look at even personal property tax, there's a really good adage from regard, don't tax anything that moves.
Don't tax anything.
That moves.
Okay.
Because if it's on wheels, it's harder to catch up with it. Basically, is what I mean. I'm kind of being facetious, but I'm also being kind of honest. What happens is it becomes a burden on that. You're always. I mean, if people sell cars and you haven't been updated, or then you got to start working with your DMV to put DMV stops. It's end up costing you more in trying to chase it than it does to actually enforce it. So when staff brought these issues and these suggestions up, basically we were looking at it from the standpoint of we're concerned about capital improvements and being able to fund capital improvements. And so it was one of those things where we really need to look at what are some ways to possibly increase in revenue. Doesn't mean this is the only way to increase revenue, but these are ideas that we're going to have to start thinking. I think now that we've moved forward with the VML VACO Finance analysis and report, I think what that's going to do is that's going to give you some of the options moving forward. But there is a reality that you have to accept, is that this coming fiscal year, we might not be able to really fund a lot of major projects with regard to the town center or to Hanover. There is some funds left that will be carried over from this year, but you're only going to have some, in other words, once those funds are gone, there's nothing coming back in to replenish them. And what we found is that unfortunately the costs have been a lot more greater than we ever anticipated when we first started out on these capital projects. And so I think that's just the reality that's kind of more setting in. So we still do have the funds for like the Hanover property, but what you had is still what you have. And actually, Sherry's going to be presenting you a little bit of information tonight to build upon these conversations to kind of show you what we do have left with regard. So,
I would really like to take this conversation further outside of tonight's meeting, in even looking comparatively at our closest jurisdiction, Prince William County, and just match item for item, tax item for tax item, just to see comparably where the town sits compared to Prince William County. And because what you're saying, these issues are good to consider. And I think just coupled with the fact that we are offering town residents a service that's higher than Prince William County, I would love to look at some of these. I'm in agreement with the rate that we are right now with the taxes, but outside of these other options, I believe it's things that we should consider. But we need more information, especially comparably.
We have that prepared for you.
Now, would this budget be held up in any way if we were to discuss that at a further date?
Yes, sir.
What's our deadline, Brian, for budget?
Let's not drag it out.
well, we need to get the advertisement out as soon as possible. I'd have to defer to our clerk to know the exact date.
How many days?
Doesn't that advertisement have to be a maximum?
That's correct.
We can always come in lower. We could advertise a higher rate and come in at a lower rate if we so desire.
That's correct. You could always take into consideration for increasing it. But it's one of those things when you look at stuff like decals and stuff, you're talking about what are you putting into at the same time. It's one of those things, if you're kind of going to go in, these are some things that Prince William County residents pay, but town residents don't. And so, you don't have an annual, but with that comes enforcement, comes, having to keep track of it.
Right.
Create a new database and having to reach out to residents and make them in and get a decal. You're talking about there's some initial startups, and then you get to weighing it. If you all were looking at other potential revenue increases or other options, I think that's when it's one of those things where, okay, well, let's look at this one as well.
Right.
Keep in mind something like a decal fee is something that directly affects the residents, whereas increasing some of the other taxes, you get more. That's more on people who are passing through.
Right.
And so that's something to also keep in mind.
How many rates do we have to advertise?
I'm sorry, are we talking about real estate?
Is it just real estate, or is it all of these other fees too?
Real estate tax rate if it's going up, we've already missed it for this year.
Okay.
If there is an increased tax rate, I have to be 30 days out. It can't be adopted the same night as the budget. You need to set tax rates. So that's not an option this year on real estate.
But what do we have to advertise for any other rates?
I believe just normal advertising, which is one run in the newspaper, but I'll have to double check with Martin.
No,
You're asking each rate has to be advertised, the pool, everything
Yes,
has to
ma'am.
be advertised.
Yes.
The rate for everything.
I have to advertise the tax rates that are in support of the budget.
Is that whether there's a change or not?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, I'm sorry.
The other thing I would have to recommend for you all at this point, it's not one of those things, I'm sorry, Councilman Cottle, you go first.
No, go ahead.
Well, the only thing I was going to say is we're kind of unfortunately, we're getting to the point where we're at the 11th hour for getting the budget in. And I think your all's true analysis is going to come from BML Vaco Finance when you all get that analysis brought to you. I don't think any of these, to try to implement, it's one of those things staff could work really, really hard, and we might be able to pull out the timeline, but I think it would be a really big challenge, and it'd be kind of one of those things, why are we adding this right now when, we had the opportunity to really kind of discuss it. I think really it's more the painting the picture, if you will, for us moving forward, that these are some of the things, and where are there other alternatives to other alternative revenue sources. And those are the questions that you're all going to have to answer moving forward in fiscal 17.
All right, it sounds like that we're going to have to stick with the same rates this year, wait for VML Vaco to come in to tell us what our options are for next year, and we'll have to tackle this earlier next year to make sure that, depending on what we want to do with these Hanover property in the town center and that we figure out a funding source and then go forward with it that way. I don't see that we can really make any changes since we have to advertise almost immediately on all these other rates right now. Comments?
Makes sense.
I have a question, and you all may or may not be able to answer this. It's really twofold. One, have we seen a significant increase in the town's revenue from business taxes since this bridge opened up?
No, I don't believe so.
Right.
It's still been about the same.
All right, second question. Has any, and again, I know predicting the future is iffy at best, but with the Chick-fil-A coming online, some of these other businesses coming online, this next budget cycle, this interchange out here should be completed. I mean, and again, I'm not going to hold you to it, but in your all's estimation, what type of increase do you think the town could get off having the roads basically completed with some of these new businesses in town? I guess where I'm getting at is if you look at these numbers, and I think about points, if we went at $15, we're only going to get 10,425. How many staff hours is it going to take? I think we're going to lose money in the long run. You go adding in another $22.9 for solid waste that a lot of people's salaries are flat. The economy's still kind of flat. And I guess where I'm getting at, let's say you did all three of these and you generated $75,000 additional dollars. What's the staff time going to take to keep up with it and manage it? Number two, don't you think as we continue to grow the businesses in town, we can offset some of this?
I think even when we're trying to project what we anticipate seeing from maybe a new business that would be coming into town, it's one of those things that at this point we still need to err on the side of caution or being conservative, because the truth is if there could be a construction delay that you don't anticipate, there could be lots of factors that you can't anticipate, and if we start factoring that into the budget, there's no question. I think initially, you're going to see a larger sum that's probably going to come in. Can we guarantee you how much that's going to be? No. But a lot of this, what's factored into when you actually go to the budget, even the surplus we do anticipate is actually already being factored in to basically maintain a level of services that we're trying to maintain now, which is why we're looking and making these proposals to look at different ways to increase revenue.
Well, I guess what I'm saying, I'm not suggesting that one business is going to be the end-all, be-all of our financial long-term solution. But what I am saying, based upon the budget we've looked at and the numbers we've run, these are proposals that aren't currently reflected in this budget, correct? So then, whatever does come in above and beyond this is going to help, because it's not budgeted monies, is what I'm getting at.
Well, I'd like to point out that let's just look at Chick-fil-A. I believe we put in $100,000 for Chick-fil-A for next year. So, assuming Chick-fil-A did not come in, we would have had a $100,000 deficit in our budget for next year. So we've already used money coming in to just balance our budget.
Right.
So instead of raising taxes, we're not going to get a Chick-fil-A every year. We're not going to get new businesses every year that's going to get substantial increases. So if we continue to increase our services, or if we want to finish the Hanover property and/or the town center, we have to come up with significant new revenue sources. And we can't, and it can be a combination, but we can't rely on just businesses or just taxes or just whatever. So I just want to make it clear that Chick-fil-A has bailed us out this year, this coming fiscal year, because we're already using $100,000. Now, hopefully, it'll be more, and we'll have a little bit of surplus. But they've already bailed us out, and so next year, it's going to be a lot tighter.
Well, I think that's where, and I appreciate it, I think it's where you look at your capital improvements, and the council comes up with like a 5-year plan. Here's what we would like to accomplish in the next 5 years. Then you bring the citizens in and say, here's what we would like to do. Here's the situation we're in. What are some of your ideas? Would you be willing to pay a solid waste fee? Would you be willing to do some of these other things, realizing the money's going to come back to you in the form of services or whatever the case may be? I just don't think we're at the point where we can do that now. We need to go with the budget and get the thing moving. That's my recommendation.
On the B-poll rates, the proposal was to raise from 0.1, which I think is the lowest around, to 0.15. Would there have to be a difference in advertising if we were to raise the rates as opposed to leaving them static? Or do you just have to advertise them whatever they happen to be?
I believe with B-poll, we can just advertise the increase. No, I have to check with Martin for sure.
Sure.
But, yeah, just the same, similar, we recently adopted the hotel tax. It was just a normal advertising.
Yeah.
It's just, real estate's just a different number.
Because I'd still be in favor of bringing that up, not all the way even to 0.15, which is kind of average for the surrounding jurisdictions, but even just to 0.13, that just that little bit, hardly any work, and it gives us, it's not a lot, but it gets us in the right direction.
I know the City of Falls Church B-polls 0.152. So it's a full.
Yeah, we are
0.52
extremely low.
Yeah.
We're extremely low in a lot of the ones there.
Yes, sir.
And I remember, I don't think we're above anyone. I think almost everyone's above us,
Right.
if I remember
If you-
correctly.
I don't know if you still have your previous packets.
I didn't bring it with me.
I kind of laid that out where if you stepped it up a little from 0.10 to 0.13 for the ones that are 0.10, you would gain an additional 25,000. If you bumped it up to 0.15, you would gain an additional 40,000 a year. So you can't take those small steps if you want. That 0.13, that gets you 25,000.
Well, the .15 is a 50% increase,
Right.
whereas the .13 would be 30%. So, I mean, it still can be considered a significant increase, no matter how you look at it, whether it's retail or repair personal business, restaurants, whatever. What was the, that was just for retail you were talking about, was it not, or was it all of them?
The three that, retail, restaurant, and personal. Yeah.
So that going to .15 was how much for all of them? 48,000 for all of them.
40,000 additional.
40,000.
A restaurant in Prince William County pays .17, a restaurant that sells mixed beverages pays .17 plus a $350 flat tax.
But they don't have meals tax there for
That-
restaurants.
The restaurant, yeah, the restaurant's not carrying that burden, they're collecting it from the
Right.
public. But I'm talking out of pocket for the restaurant.
I personally don't have any appetite, no pun intended, for raising any of these taxes right now. I think we need to go through this study, see where we are, see where our picture is, and we can make adjustments on the budget. But, you know, frankly, we haven't even looked at the expense side yet. I don't think we've really gone through that carefully enough on our numbers. So before we do any of that stuff, I think we've got to go through it. Just my opinion.
Just, let's take a quick temperature of the council, if there's any interest in looking at an increase of some type on B-poll.
I would like some comparisons. Before I do anything, I would like comparisons. I would like to know.
We had those all at the last
Yeah, we had
budget
these-
session.
it was
Yeah,
these.
but even with this additional, we have some additional information that we had.
Susan, any interest at
No,
all?
not at this point.
Okay.
I would be interested in looking at a change.
Any interest? Okay, so we've got 3-1 and somebody looking at paperwork.
Somebody,
I'd say
Councilman Morris. That's somebody.
It's the body.
Yeah.
the body. I'd say it doesn't look like we're going to be looking at that at all this year. And the general consensus is to wait for the study being done to then figure out, once we know the numbers, how do we get there? Whether it's going to the citizens and looking for a bond referendum or something, or some other method. All right,
You want to move forward, please?
let's move forward.
Okay, well, this is more of a discussion talk for you all. This kind of falls under the matrix under other discussion issues. First thing to look at is the town-sponsored events. Currently, the town does sponsor its events annually. The town covers approximately 38% of the total cost not covered by private sponsors. The event brings the community, visitors, and revenues to local businesses. Basically, what we're looking at as staff will continue to work towards getting sponsorships so that, you know, you might lower that 38%. But basically, the question that for you all to consider moving forward is, do you wish to allocate, to continue to allocate resources to town events, or would you prefer for staff to start drawing back on the identified 4 events per year?
I'll start with this. For only taking over the events a year ago and to only be covering approximately a third of it and getting the sponsors for the rest, I think is excellent in that first year. Hopefully, we can do better, but for now, I'm definitely willing to pay that third to keep the community coming out, getting together, and for the 4 events. Next.
I'm in favor. Do we have a dollar figure what it was last year? Fiscal 16.
Is it in here? Is there a line
our rough total was approximately where we had the budget at, which was, with everything involved, we took it over with the holiday event last year, so we haven't, I guess we actually did get to a full year. It's roughly about roughly 65,000. We have pulled in 40-some thousand in sponsorships. Actually, the actual as of FY16, as of March 9th, 2016, was spent 44,303. So we're pretty much tracking right about where we are. We know that the events run us about roughly close to 65,000 on an annual basis. So that's where you get the 38% roughly from. So
we're paying 20
cherries-
to 25,000.
Roughly, yeah. Now, that's one of those things, we continue, every now and then, we do get new sponsorships, we do get, we're continuing to reach out. As we're learning and growing a little bit more in this process, we know a lot more about when to approach businesses and everything. It also helps when we get a main sponsor, which we did achieve this year. Last year, those sponsorships there was multitude of sponsors. And so we are growing the process. But I think it's also plausible that you all do put in something because it's a community-wide event.
The community loves it. I mean, nothing but kudos I've heard.
Well, and it brings business to the town businesses as well at the same time. So it's not just the event, it's what surrounds it too.
Isn't the meals tax, or what's the tax that supposed to be plowed back in? Isn't there a percentage? I'm thinking out loud. What am I thinking of? I'm trying to remember.
No, you're right. You're right, Joe.
Wasn't that the logic? It was going to be plowed back in, reinvested to help the businesses attract more. And so what you're saying is that's one way of doing it. But couldn't we be even more efficient? More efficient?
Oh, absolutely.
And,
But I think that's going to come with time. I mean, just having 1 year, I think every year, it's going to grow and.
I would hope every year we can get what we pay further down.
Right, that's what
That
I'm
would
saying.
be the goal.
Right.
But in 1 year to only pay 38%, I think is pretty good, that we got as much as we did.
Before you said it was excellent, not pretty good.
Stupendous.
Okay. So I guess my question is, so the question on the table is, do we want to reduce the number of events? But weren't the sponsorships based on the 4 rather than some other number? Okay. Now, I guess where I'm looking at, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but on the sponsorship side, I mean, we've got some really good sponsors. Aren't there any other opportunities or possibilities? Are we actively trying to go after, is I guess my question.
I do believe that Denise continues to actively seek sponsorships. As a matter of fact, I think we just recently got a sponsor last week.
We get new sponsors regularly.
Some will jump on board for the specific event, like, for example, with the Health and Fitness Fair coming up. We're getting some additional sponsorships. We're approaching some that would have more of a direct line to that type of event. We're pretty much set with regard to moving forward with the Haymarket Day, but if someone else wants to come on, what we found was most of these businesses will start allocating towards, they're at the calendar year, whereas we're 6 months either ahead or behind, however you want to look at it. But that's typically the way, we look at a fiscal year from July to the end of June, whereas they're allocating for these sponsorships in January.
That's right. So the sponsorship continues throughout the year versus just the half a year.
As far as the growing the revenue, though, I mean, from a vendor, how much room do we have to really grow the revenue? Because we're packed to begin with. So if we're looking at vendor booths, I mean, pretty much every square inch that can be used is being used. So the only place I could see us really increasing revenue would be through major corporate sponsored things. I guess what I'm saying, it's already packed to begin with, which is a great thing.
Well, you could raise your vendor booth fees. I mean, that would be one way to cover additional costs. What we need staff from direction is basically, the question is really being posed, are Are you okay? Can you accept the fact that you're having to fund some of it? Meantime, we still have the same directive from council to continue to try to get additional sponsorships and try to meet this. I mean, I think by the time we get to the end of this fiscal year, you're probably going to be higher on, that percentage is going to probably go down. Because I think our sponsorships,
And
as
remember,
they've started seeing what
We're trying
producing.
to limit the number of street closings, so that's why we've limited the number of booths. If we had the need and we opened it up again, we'd have to close more streets and there'd be more blowback from the public, but there'd be more revenue too and more booths.
What do our costs cover? Is a large part of that security? I mean, I would be curious to see what we're actually funding. What are we paying for?
We can give them a detailed printout.
Yeah, we can get some detail, but you're covering like the stages, the bands, the porta potties, everything. Fencing, if we need fencing, trash, security,
And we are doing a
equipment,
large
rental,
number of
equipment, signs, yeah.
Advertising.
So clarify this for me. So this amount is not an item. The cost, it's not an item. We just fund it. It's not an expense. It's not on the budget as an item. It just comes out of reserves.
Correct. It's under town-sponsored events, and
Right.
basically what it comes down to is you're all filling in the gaps.
Okay.
Whenever we run low, we need porta potties, and we have no sponsor of porta potties. We have to get porta potties.
I mean,
So
there's-
that's really kind of where.
Under income, there's town-sponsored events.
Right.
And that's like $40,000 of income. And then under expenses, there's like $60,000 or $65,000 for town-sponsored events. So, yeah, there's a misbalance there. It's not that's where the 38% comes from, because it's not, there's not as much income as outgo. But we're spending only what we have budgeted.
Right. But
we're
and
hoping
I
to
tend
get
to agree with the vice mayor. Having done this for a year, we're doing good. I think we're reaching out to more people. We're getting more people involved. 38% is a good number for year one. And I think we should continue doing what we're doing. And whenever the time comes to maybe look at a small increase on the booths, that would definitely reduce our percentage. And we should look at it. We should look at it when the time comes and when that committee meets to look at the next major event. But I agree with the vice mayor that we are in a good position with it.
So I don't see any changes necessary unless anybody else has any.
I'd like to see us lay out a plan going forward to try to become more cost neutral, if there's a way we could do that. Some of the ideas and items that we could work towards.
Is that
Rather
some-
than just talking about it, at least have something that we're working towards.
I don't think we're ever going to get to a cost neutral, just because,
It's a goal.
yeah.
It's a goal.
But is
to
that
get
something
there.
that should be done at the events committee level?
We could probably do it there.
Yeah,
Right.
it should be.
But I make a move that we depose the vice mayor at this moment.
I second.
I think you did a great job, Steve. Thank you.
I think he drank his Ensure. I think he drank his Ensure before he came in, though.
Mr. Vice Mayor.
I just wanted to give Councilman Woods your answer. To date, I think probably the numbers town manager has in your report, they're a little better now for the revenue for sponsorships. So out of the 53,788 we've received to date, about 20,000 is sponsorships.
20?
20,000.
That's not 38%. That's 65% at least.
Once again, you go to the fact that they're going off a calendar year. That's what we've received to date. That doesn't mean, because we had other sponsorships from last year. Because if you look at the budgeted revenue,
So we don't get sponsorship per event.
correct.
Ah, okay.
Correct. This is just like a whole number going to all the events.
We get a sponsorship for a calendar year.
Right.
Yeah,
Their calendar
we're-
year.
Their calendar year, and
It
we're
doesn't
working
match
on a
with our
fiscal
calendar.
year, and we have to split the money up and save it for
Yeah.
next year and keep it for this year. It gets a little messy.
Because the,
For a little, yeah.
if you look at the proposed budget spreadsheet, you'll notice as of 3/9/2016, we had received in revenues 44,303.17. So,
And that's what I'm saying, today's number is 53,000.
oh, sorry, today's number, that's what didn't come out. Today's number is 53,000 in total revenues. So do you see, we were budgeted at 65,000, we brought in 53,000. So it's even less than 38% already.
Yeah, we got some checks in the last 5 minutes. All right, we're going to take a 5-minute break, and when we come back, I'll be over there.
I'm gonna bring some stuff over. I'm gonna bring some stuff over.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and call our meeting back to order. Thank you, Vice Mayor, for filling in there. I appreciate that sincerely. The only other thing that I think I would add with the town sponsors event, and I would leave this up for discussion, would be that we set a budget and basically we live within that budget. If we have a certain amount of sponsorships that we have, then we make that budget and we curtail the event. That if we still keep the same amount of events, we curtail the spending on it to match our budget, just like we would do anytime we spend. And with the anticipation of at least doing it the 1 year, I think we probably could get and do a pretty good guesstimate of the revenues that we anticipate coming in, especially Haymarket Day. That seems to be obviously the biggest revenue generating for the town. So that's the only thing, other consideration I would say, instead of having this mismatched delta, that we live within what we can anticipate and what we have sponsorships for and what we anticipate. If something goes out of whack, then obviously we fill the gap, but there's a way to make that work, or one idea.
I think that may be hard to do. I think it may be better to, my suggestion would be to know that we have a max during the year. We use that max, that we don't go over that max. And then continue to seek out sponsorship. And if we do ever get to a negative percentage, then we could vote on where that extra goes towards. That make sense?
Yeah.
As we keep reducing it. So now that we have a max, instead of having a budget and we stick to that budget,
We have to learn to live within our means.
yeah, there may be times, and this is where the event committee would be able to advise us. There may be times when we may have to go up a little bit. If it's an event that got rained out and we had to spend $5,000 on a tent because of the rain, then we have to adjust it as we go along.
Yeah, I think my point was just more that yes, you budget this amount, but that's what we spend within that amount. And then the sponsorships would, I think we could be able to do it without having this uncertainty. If anything, it would be a good uncertainty because we would just not spend as much there. But just my
Wanted
thought.
to, if I could, I think I caused some confusion with my,
Numbers?
I said earlier.
Clarify it, please.
Okay.
We have already received $53,000 in revenue for events. 20,000 of that is sponsorship. I was under the impression you thought we only received 20,000.
No, I think I read it correctly.
Okay. Just making sure.
Okay.
That's why I said it wasn't 38%.
Yeah, what's that?
That's why I said it was not 38%.
Would have been less.
Yeah, and some of this money for sponsorships will, like you said, our fiscal year split, so some of it will have to be moved to the next fiscal year.
So you're saying 20,000 came in for sponsorships, and then the rest of the 58 is
yes.
like booth money or stuff like that?
Correct.
So it's all income for that, so if we're at 58 out of 65, then the town's only putting forth, I don't know, 15% or something.
Oh,
instead of-
that's different.
$15,000.
Yes, but again, keep in mind, some of this money's got to be moved to next
From
fiscal
next
year.
fiscal
Because
year.
it's got to
Correct.
cover Haymarket Day and.
So there's, right.
Now, here's a good question, and I don't expect the answer now. But what if the booth fee was raised by $15? What would last fiscal year be?
$15?
Yeah. If it was increased, each booth was increased by $15, what would the percentage have been? Again, I don't want to answer now, but a good email tomorrow or Thursday would be good.
Sure.
Or how much could it be to make it a cost neutral would be the
But you got to
thing.
take into
Is
account
it-
how many people drop out because their fee's too high.
Yeah, but I think we have a waiting list.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we'll be laboring.
Yes.
Yeah.
Next up, our Public Works.
Mayor, do you want to just catch everybody up?
Sure.
Really quick, basically this coming fiscal year, actually is pretty much right after the start of the fiscal year, our current contract with Public Works contractor will expire. Ultimately, this would be the ideal time to possibly look at expand personnel and begin formulating the Public Works Department, but the current budget really cannot sustain the initiative for FY 2017 as is currently proposed. Basically, because you're not just talking about just the staff member, you're talking about a salary with benefits, and by the time you have benefits, then you've got to also still get equipment so that they can do the stuff that we're asking to do. By the time you do that, you have a very small amount of money to actually do any of the work that needs to be done throughout the course of a year. So that's the issue you run into. To start with a new contractor, require a new RFP. The process would also could possibly cost the town some continuity with regard to current services, and would actually add additional initial costs for a new contractor to familiarize themselves with the town's facilities. Essentially, the question to be asked for you all to consider is, do we wish to renegotiate with our current contractor in order to maintain continuity amongst our current services? Or the other option would be, well, actually got three options. You could also just go out for a brand new bid and start a new process. Or you could also even consider just renegotiating portions of what their current contract covers and then going out for bid on other sections. So, for example, they currently maintain all your landscaping as well. They have a subcontractor who does this work. It's based upon a budget that was part of their scope. We think there's a lot of, in working with Councilman Morris as facilities chairman, we think that there's some ways that the scope wasn't very detailed at the beginning, which is what's led to us being in the current situation. But that'd be one example. In other words, you could keep your current contractors on that would keep some continuity with regard to our facilities maintenance, but you could pull some things out and go out to bid for those individual things. That would be one opportunity. So essentially, you've got three options. Renegotiate with the current contractor that provides public works and public facilities management. Go out for bid for all new services, which could be individual contractors if you wanted to. You don't have to lump it all together. Or three, renegotiate portions of the contract and go out to bid for certain other portions of the public works that needs to be accomplished. So with that, I turn it over to you.
Boy, they're ready for the discussion on this one.
She was first.
Okay.
I believe that we're getting fleeced currently by having one contractor who is subcontracting all this out. And I think we're spending way too much money and we have no control over who he brings in. And I think we need to get a handle on this because I've only been signing the check since October or something, and it's ghastly when I sign them. Gives me heartburn.
Okay. Councilman Woods?
My question was, are we satisfied with our current service?
That would be a fair question. Do you want to go over to this side?
I can respond.
Oh, well, I was hoping to get,
Okay.
then we'll,
Go ahead.
I'm all for opening it up. I mean, I don't know why we can't negotiate with the lawn care service directly rather than subcontracting it out. When I met with the guy at 6 o'clock in the morning on Saturday and asked him who he works for, he goes, Genesis gets us to mow, and he said, we subcontract under Genesis, and I wrote this question, why is Genesis subcontracting lawn care? Why can't we just go get, it's a middleman that we shouldn't have to pay for. And I'm all for taking the different areas and going and negotiating directly with that said contractor. Because I'm like Susan over there, I think I think we could save a lot of money and cut out the middleman.
All right. Councilman Passanello?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, I agree with that 100%. Not 110, 100%. Anyway, so this contract is due what is it, June?
I think August.
August this year?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And it's been going on now for 3 years.
And so what are the terms? Can you extend that for a short period of time?
I think you all have the ability. I mean, that's what I'm trying to say. Like, if there's portions of the services that you're okay with, then you could obviously renegotiate that. But I think you could. It's in your all's ballpark.
Yeah, just say what's written on the contract is probably, just need to relook at that.
Well,
Is there an
certainly,
extension or month to
I
month?
think, Chris, you were going to start to really delve into that, I guess, and you're already working with Brian on the scoping of it,
Yes.
and then some other ideas. So that's, I think, critical. Certainly, I'd like to cut out the middleman. I just don't agree with that. I think we should be managing it through the town rather than have a contractor
I would also
subcontract.
like to see something in the contracts with these people that does not allow subcontracting out. Because you have more control over what's happening if people keep, I don't know.
Well, no,
That's
I
just
mean,
my-
I hear where you're going. They may not have the skill set for certain things, so they would have to subcontract out perhaps.
Yeah, but I think what she's saying, what Councilwoman Edwards is saying, is whoever we contract out should already have the skill set.
Yeah.
Or
So the
they-
problem-
they
It wasn't
don't
vetted that way.
qualify.
Because the problem that we're having now is that we have a company that takes care of everything concerning the public works.
Right.
But they don't have the skill set for 80% of what is asked of them to do.
You know what we should do? We should look at doing a pre-approved list of different vendors. I mean, I know that's probably some work, but you can do pre-quals and, for the different things that you need, electrician, carpenter, plumbers, lawn care, whatever. And if you have a pre-qual list you can call upon, for that help, that might be the way to go. And then you have a schedule of rates and what have you, so you know exactly what you're getting.
Vice Mayor?
Well, the pre-qual list is what we had before, and apparently it didn't work as well as we'd hoped. And we went to the Genesis thing, hoping to bring it all into one thing, and that didn't work as well as we'd hoped. So I'm concerned that we're bouncing back and forth between the way we used to do it, the way we currently do it, and trying to find we're trying to find the best, least costly way of doing it. I do agree that having one firm that subcontracts out can cost more money, especially if we don't get detailed invoices that can really let us figure out what it's really costing us. So there is opportunity for losing money in that area.
That's true.
I'm not sure what the right way to go is here. That's what I'm trying to say, is that we've tried it many different ways, and we keep looking for a better way. So I'm not sure.
Okay. Just one more comment, though. At the very least, what we should be doing is going out for bid. And
Absolutely.
forcing competition and getting some other folks in there to bid on it. And then perhaps that would even drive the cost down. But it sounds to me that we probably don't want to keep who we have currently. At least that's the impression.
Or even to an extent, just have them do just certain things. The things that they are skilled at.
Which is what Brian's talking about.
Right.
Which is what?
So, well, they did do contracting work with the caboose. That's what they do,
Construction.
So, Brian was reinstate this current one, get bids on new services or get bids for some services. So there may be things that they are good at, and of course they will get an opportunity to bid on it. I agree with Joe that we need to offer it to bid. I would. There is some other areas that we are exploiting right now, and it has to do with someone who works in the town. And when we look at the HVAC, electrical, and plumbing, these are three major areas that we're spending. And we cannot get a detailed, I believe we cannot get a detailed invoice from the present contract company because it's subcontracted. And then on the subcontracting, you would see the markup. So I think that is one of the reasons why we keep demanding detailed invoices, but we can't get them.
Okay. I think there is a consensus. Perhaps this obviously couldn't take place tonight, but perhaps we've set a public facilities meeting that we can drill down on this, get the information of which areas off this onion that we could peel off to see where we are. Because you're right. I don't remember the issues we had. Our current landscaper that was back there was doing it for 20-plus years. Matter of fact, had very few issues that I can remember being on council that we had with him. And all of a sudden, the axe was dropped, and he was no longer employed. Arctic Air did our HVAC maintenance, local town business. That so I don't remember those real issues. I think it was just more of a way of a one-point or one-stop shopping that we, at the time the council devised, to have just one point of contact to do all these things, thinking that maybe this would be easier. My recollection for it.
But it may be easier, sir. It may be easier, but it's costing us more.
Oh, I couldn't argue with that point as well. All you'd have to do is look at this snow contract or invoice for this past snowstorm to see that.
Mr. Mayor, if I can,
Sure.
just to comment on something Councilman Passanelli. It's actually not very hard to do RFP for on-call services. I mean, basically what you would do is you do a competitive RFP for, you could do, and you can't do an RFP for competitive services with regard to landscaping. You don't want to have it, but for like on-call for like general contractors or on-call for maybe heating and air. One of the issues I think we ran into, and I think the reason that you alluded to it actually when you were speaking, is the fact that we did find there was a lot of discontinuity between the various different things. It's fine when you just have one heating system that you're working on, but then when the heating system runs into the plumbing line and they don't know what's going on, that was one of the reasons the press was to go to kind of a facilities manager or kind of contracting company. But as far as with regard to going on to like on-call services, basically the way that would work is we'd do an RFP or actually an RFB to be considered on-call. The top three or how many, you could take 5 if you want to, and basically it would basically be upon the town whenever there was work to be done. You just send it out to those 3 pre-qualified contractors. Whoever comes back with a bid that seems legitimate and can get it done in the quickest plan, that's who you go with. Right. The only caveat to that issue is that currently on staff, we don't have anyone who could come up with that scope. And I would also advise you, even from a standpoint of that really shouldn't be a scope that maybe necessarily even council members may have a skill set to do that. That's not really one of those things that you're driven to do. So that would be one of the catches for the council to consider is if you went to like a more of an on-call contractor kind of process, you need to be able to have someone who can craft a scope of what needs to be done. Because when the AC unit goes out, I mean, you got to kind of know where you want them to start, so to speak. That's my understanding. But also with regard to small minor projects that you need done.
I think there again, I think a meeting on the side on this would help and help steer us.
One quick thing there, wouldn't we be able to get scopes like that from other jurisdictions that do this regularly? Potentially?
Potentially, but our systems are going to be slightly different.
Yeah.
You run into this stuff. I think HVAC is HVAC. I think plumbing is plumbing. I don't think you need to necessarily have a scope, but it's more when you have that special project where you're going to actually you're renovating, you're making a small renovation at the museum or something to that effect.
For example, what do we pay to bring down our flags and put them up, Sherry?
It's usually around 1,300.
12.
Yeah, 12.
$1,300.
Yes.
Yes. So
There was
see-
one time when it
so-
went up, and
So there, so there we definitely need to
I want
look.
to see you get up on that ladder.
Yeah.
We definitely need to look at this, and I think tonight's not tonight, but let's plan a facilities meeting and then really drill down on this and see where we're at.
Yeah, and I think you
And
can
invite-
move sooner rather than later.
Oh, yeah.
The contract's up in August.
Quickly.
Actually, I was mistaken. I had it right here. I'm sorry. When you asked, it's actually finishes in July 15th.
Yeah, so we need to act.
This year.
We'll see if we can put a meeting together maybe next week then as early.
That's
too.
fine. And
Okay.
are we at the point where we need to notify our current contractors that we are going to be moving in a different direction?
Look at our
or-
contract. Whatever our contract states is what, if we're supposed to give a 90-day notice or a 30-day notice, we need to look and see if bearing no notice, then just a phone call, I think, would just let them know that
If they're
we're
watching,
looking
they
at
would
the
know.
things. And I would invite them to the meeting as well. That way,
No.
we could have a better
I
understanding.
think we'd invite them probably, sir, after the meeting. I wouldn't invite them to the meeting.
All right.
No
So,
meeting.
They can come. It's going to be hard for them, but they can come.
all right, so currently for the budget standing, I'm not sure we can really do anything with this. Yeah. The big ticket item, sale of the property.
Oh, Mr. Mayor, I would save that discussion for
Yes.
moving on.
When we get the credit benchmark report.
Well, I think when you get that report, I think also when you move forward with your new council, because you're not going to do anything between now
No, I
and the end
understand, but
of fiscal year.
at least
so.
the discussion that we had here with, Steve pointing over there, that's Steve. So we'll pass over on that, obviously, for those specific reasons. So we got 30 minutes. We got 30 minutes to see if we can go down through here. All right, are we ready to switch over to expenditures now?
Just one minor item on page 1 of 6. We're going to take that Suite 110 rental income out, right, of the budget? Yes. Yeah, okay.
Which one?
Suite 110 rental.
Yeah, it's like zero.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's your address? 15020?
It's what was
Yeah, I'm just saying. Budget. Yeah, I know. I'm just saying.
And just correct me if I'm wrong, every, for the rentals, they're based on the escalations that would be projected or that go through the lease for next year? Okay, great. Any other questions about the revenue? Seeing none, I guess we'll move.
Is there any way to just have it listed according to the address, like it's the building? Like everything for this building under one topic, everything is separate. Maybe easy to do. But you have Suite 2 or 2 underneath 1526.
We'll take it.
Okay, over to expenditures. Well, where do we start? Salary and wages, we came up with this number based on today's salary, no increases at all.
That's correct. Mr. Mayor, just as a matter of keeping things moving, actually, I would say, why don't you just go through, we'll just do administration, and anyone can jump in with questions, and hopefully we can proceed through them quickly.
Sure.
I don't know if going line by line would be our.
No, that's fine, we'll go grouping by grouping. So anything regarding administration?
Yeah, just to clarify our previous discussion, if you go down to the VRS line item, under town admin, that increase from 15.6 to 31, that is the additional increase for the LEOs that is probably going to get moved over to the PD to more reflect where the cost is, if you get my drift. Or does anybody have an issue with that, or? Okay.
Nothing else for admin. We'll go to legal services.
Wait a minute, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Sure.
I had a question about the dues, the books, the subscriptions, that thing. It's what is that, 15,000? If I remember right, just to clarify, that's for the additional Muni code? Is that what that was for?
Yes,
Okay. And that's on the website?
the website.
Yeah, okay.
How much is that?
That alone is.
Let's see, it's roughly 900 a month because we just upgraded to HD.
Oh, no, that's web streaming.
Yeah.
It's not Municode.
Oh, it's not?
No, this is for the streaming of the video,
Oh, okay.
agenda preparation,
Okay, so
minute
that still
preparation.
leaves 3,000 to 4,000 for other things,
Correct.
which is
Covers.
in line with last year's budget.
Okay.
Any further for admin? Good to move on to legal. I'd ask for consideration to take 120 down to 90.
We did it last year, and it didn't work.
Well, we need to tighten our legal budget then, you know? To me, it's,
Okay,
we could,
Mr. Mayor,
we could start with discussion.
how are we going to do
Okay.
it? That is the question.
All right, great.
If at all possible, can you all move on to another? I actually have a report from our town attorney which breaks down what the various different charges it goes. And it basically comes out to like about
We
a
have that
percentage.
available for
I'm
all of
going
us
to go
right now?
I'm going to go print it off and make sure it's in color. I'm saying, can you all move on to the next
Sure,
item? I'll
we'll go
bring
to
this
that one.
before you
Okay.
move on.
Let's see. Independent auditor. So was this always this much? Does this seem like it's jumping off the page at me?
It minimally increases.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think it used to be around 13.5 or something.
We had we won't see it again for quite some time, but we had to have a special federal audit because of the amount of federal funds we had received. Because of Streetscape. So we exceeded $500,000, and that triggers an audit that cost us more money. So be great to see it again, but I don't think we're going to see that.
Okay,
So
all right.
So you think it'll
I think it'll go down, but obviously Sherry's comfortable with this number, so.
That brings us over to public safety.
Well, there's a lot going on in the public safety budget, and I thought maybe it's best to explain what the three types of adjustments are in the budget, because they are spread out, and in some places, they're actually subtracting and adding in the same cost category. But nonetheless, the three adjustments are, there were adjustments to the base budget, both up and down. There were also enhancements added to the budget. And if I were to start with the adjustments to the base, those that went up really are centered around personnel cost. And most notably, moving personnel costs from 80 hours a pay period to 84 hours a pay period. And, of course, that is what they're scheduled for. Also, there was an adjustment to the base relative to the part-time employee. There was about a $3,500 increase to come as close as we can to 100% coverage. In those same categories, though, there are enhancements. And in base salaries, the enhancement is an additional $6,500 to take one position of a patrol officer and upgrade it to a sergeant. And we're having to do that because over time, as personnel changes occurred in the agency, including a demotion, salaries weren't adjusted. And so because of that lack of adjustment, we've now had to go back and recreate a sergeant's position. So that wages and salaries regular includes the addition of a sergeant's position. We also broke out as an adjustment to the base holiday pay. This is a defined benefit. It had never been in the budget, but it needs to be, again, it's a defined benefit by town policy. The last enhancement that actually we already talked about was the LEO supplement, and there is an enhancement to personnel costs to LEO supplement. There were a number of items where we actually subtracted the base budget. And I'm not going to go through every one, but I will go through the most significant. The first of those is legal. And really, legal for us encapsulates two separate costs. The first of those being what we pay our law firm every month to represent us in court. And the second part of that is when we need to call for legal advice, which, quite frankly, we don't do that often. And when we looked at what we are projected to spend this year, I felt pretty comfortable. In fact, we all felt pretty comfortable lowering that down by about $3,500. There was also adjustments to the base for electrical services, and a big part of that was actually, I think, some consolidation in terms of where we pay for utilities. But the fact remains that even in that building that we are still in now, we way over budgeted for electrical. We weren't spending nearly that much annually. And now we're also going to have the added benefit of being out of that building into this building, so there's going to be some significant cost savings in the base budget for electrical. Some minor adjustments on, the percentage there are large, some minor adjustments on office supplies. We lowered that by about $900. The last two big adjustments, though, were both in vehicle fuels and vehicle maintenance. And we looked at what we were spending so far this year in vehicle fuels, and we are blessed by the luxury of relatively low gas prices. And we actually went to some significant effort, I think, to predict what gas prices will look like this coming fiscal year. And on the basis of that, I still feel pretty comfortable in lowering vehicle fuels somewhat down to $16,000. Lastly, and probably most significantly, was the decrease in vehicle maintenance and supplies. And we had actually, for FY16, before we made an earlier budget adjustment, had $27,000 budgeted for vehicle maintenance. And we are projected this year to spend somewhere around $12,000 before we accounted for the fact that we bought yet another new engine. That kind of threw things a bit astray. But nonetheless, $15,000, again, while a pretty significant adjustment downward to the base, I think is actually pretty realistic. And we are also, again, always exploring alternatives in terms of are we getting the best bang for our buck and how we get these cars serviced. And there's some other options out there that we are considering. So that really ultimately leads us to enhancements. And you've all heard me talk before about tiering enhancements, from those I consider critical to those that at a Tier 3 level are somewhat luxurious. But nonetheless, the four Tier 1 items that I included in the expenses are deadly force training, our firearms training, our additional use of force training, our LEO supplement, and then the upgrade to the sergeant's position. I already mentioned both the personnel issues. The training issues is, again, very at the 100% absolute top of my list, because right now this agency doesn't train. And for deadly force training, they go to the range once a year. They shoot a qualification course, which is required by DCJS, the Department of Criminal Justice Services, and that is it. My issue is that there are guiding case law, particularly Popow v. Margate, that says shooting at a target is not training. You have to put officers in light circumstances that they will typically face in a real-world situation. That includes firing in darkness. That includes firing from unusual positions. It includes firing with your weak hand. It includes firing while exiting a cruiser, all the sorts of things that an officer is likely going to face in real life. And this agency really has done none of that. The other issue is, and again driven by a case called Zuckel v. Denver, is that the courts recognize that there may be nothing really more troublesome than training a person to be a highly skilled marksman and then not giving them the associated judgment to shoot and more importantly, not shoot. And so we have a legal requirement to have judgment shooting, and this agency yet again does none of that. And so for relatively affordable numbers, we can put in place programs that will, I think, protect the town, protect the officers, and probably most importantly, protect the citizens by giving these guys the level of instruction they need to again, know when to use force, and again, more importantly, when not to use force. The last item as an enhancement, and again, I'm inheriting this from Interim Chief Smith with the assumption that this town council still wanted to move forward on body cameras, but is body-worn cameras. And so all of those enhancements are in the expenses in varying different areas. And I certainly can break out those costs for you. I can provide them. But they have all been included into the budget.
Questions?
Just a comment. No question. Just for everybody's benefit, look at the VRS line item. That 45 goes to 55, I think. And then your bottom number would not be 779, it would be 774,900.
And again, recognizing that what's in there right now is the 1.85 multiplier, and we would probably drop about 5,000 off of that.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to reflect by that.
Right.
I do have we talked about this earlier, about Prince William County and this mobile data computer network service.
Yeah.
And frankly, in my view, that's more of a political discussion I think we need to have.
And I started that conversation with Supervisor Canlin this past weekend, specifically about that. How is it that, why are we helping pay when we're actually helping assist outside our town limits? And we're openly helping, but this doesn't just seem fair. That and possibly of adding things like training. Why couldn't our officers train, or why are we imposed a fee to have them train when it only benefits both parties? So the discussions are started. It was very positive. I think he was. Of course, they're working on the budget, and I'm hoping that he'll find some money for us. So these numbers go away. So.
Well, that'd be great.
Yep.
Chief, is the reason the body-worn cameras are under the computer, internet, and website line item rather than uniforms and police supplies, for example?
Well, they're actually under, I want to say, 2 or 3 separate areas.
Okay.
I will remind you, because I may not have mentioned this, but we are looking at a grant that funds the equipment portion.
Okay.
And the grant is actually specifically advertised for body-worn cameras through DMV this year, and we won't know whether or not we're awarded it until probably about August, and then if we are, we have funding available in October. But nonetheless, it is captured in a couple of different areas. Those portions that would not be paid for by the grant include the one-time professional services setup, which I put under computer, internet, and website. Also, under book dues and subscriptions include the warranty program and then the costs for the cloud storage.
Okay.
So it's sort of dispersed throughout the budget in 3 separate places.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Chief, if you don't get that grant, then we're not getting the cameras because there's not anything in the budget for the hardware?
I never say never, because you can in midstream start making some adjustments. It's about the amount that DMV is going to fund for the first year equipment costs is $6,156. I think we actually rounded it up to about $7,000.
So it's not a huge amount.
It wouldn't be impossible, It's, again, why I would say never say never.
And what is the useful life of those units?
Well, the warranty program that we buy in, recognizing that the technology is evolving so quickly, actually replaces them free of charge every 2.5 years. So you pay a little bit up front, but again, recognizing how fast technology explodes. They do a return on investment spreadsheet, and they put the numbers out there for you. If you buy into the warranty program, it just pays for itself.
Good.
The 7,000 grant is mostly for storage,
No, quite the opposite. It's hardware only.
just hardware.
Yeah, the grant restricts itself really to hardware and some of the associated licensing. And so what we're picking up are things like the cloud storage.
Do you know of any grants that, because storage is a huge component, do you know of any grants that would help us with storage?
I don't, only because it seems that to date, the grant mechanisms are sort of hung up on hardware, not the backside. It seems like there's a learning curve on what a body-worn camera system looks like. I would tell you that with Congresswoman Comstock's law enforcement liaison, he and I have had multiple conversations about what an actual body-worn camera grant program should look like, and it includes all those backside support systems like docking and storage and evidence management. But to date, regardless of those conversations, I haven't seen anything that comes to fruition in terms of being able to capitalize. I will say that for this agency, you're talking about 1 terabyte to 1.5 terabyte of storage per year, and so it's not horrific. It's about $1,500. The beauty of that, though, is that because it is a cloud solution, I can, for instance, grant viewing rights to the Commonwealth's attorney. And so if there's a particular case that an assistant Commonwealth attorney is prosecuting, he can pull that up off of his desktop and view the footage that he needs to view. So, again, it would seem to be money well spent, particularly in terms of how you can sort of share data. And,
Yeah, but physical storage could be considered part of the hardware.
Well, I would love to see it in terms of being applicable to a grant, just they haven't been willing to recognize it so far.
Okay, any other questions related to presentation here?
Not for the chief, but to this line item about the fire and rescue. Can you remind me why it's only 10,000?
That's a grant that is, it's called Aid to Localities, and that's predetermined by the state.
Just to pass through, right?
Correct.
Right. Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions regarding the police? All right, public safety, move on.
Should we go back to the lawyer
Oh, yeah,
thing?
yeah, so,
We only have 10 minutes.
yeah. Legal. So obviously Matt's done the math, and I could see you seeing what I'm probably looking at as well. So how much did we,
Well, if you factor out Dominion Power, Mr. Ring, Finley, proffer policy, planning commission bylaws, and probably sign ordinance close to being done, but if you just factor out H9, H4, F1, A1, A2, that's $23,360.
But what's going to be the new, Mr. Ring, the new bylaws, the new, there's going to be new issues coming up. I wouldn't advocate dropping down.
I would feel comfortable dropping that and then addressing them as they come up. I think if not, it's just going to escalate to where it just becomes more and more. And what is standard legal fees for a percent of budget for a town?
Believe it or not, we're actually pretty much right on course compared to other jurisdictions with regard to how much we spend. Now, you can certainly lower it. I don't know all the details of every single jurisdiction of what they spend. In talking to, I know Manassas, we're right on the percentage. However, BFN does represent Manassas as well, but we're on the same percentage. One of the things that, just to kind of talk to these exact issues, one of the things, the big catch was going after taxes.
Yeah, that's what
These are taxes that are, keep in mind, yes, we're paying them, but this is money that's owed to the town. And so that's one of the things they've been
Is that
going after.
for the one a la carte?
Yes. Blue Sky Enterprises.
Basically a wash.
Wow.
Yeah, and so
there.
you have that, you have the sign ordinance, you have streetscape with Finley, Dominion Power Proper Policy, PC bylaws, a few other issues. I think the bigger thing is, another thing to consider is the fees related to taxes and leases relate to the town's revenue generating activity. So that's about 22%. And then the Finley case involved a contract claim that resulted in significant net savings to the town versus going into court. I think it's one of those things from a standpoint of the council's viewpoint and priority. You certainly can lower it. I think what I do think our attorneys were trying to point out is that there's about 60% of what is in their bill, their billing, that is stuff you got to do. I mean, you got to have them here, you got to have them working on some things. And then there's about that other like 40% or greater, that's stuff that you just can't control. I mean, from a planning and zoning issue, the sign ordinance, the decision that was rendered at the Supreme Court threw every single jurisdiction into this flux. The legislation that just got handed down with proffers, this is something we have to work on.
I think we all realize that there's
Yeah.
certain things that we obviously we have to put these big rocks in there first. Councilman Passanello.
I just, okay. They're showing 142,000 billed from July through May, right? So we still have June, and this is showing an end-of-year projection of 109. So we're going to have to find money just for this year, let alone for next year. And we already moved money over. What did we move over?
$30,000.
30,000?
30,000, and at the time we moved it over, there was a bill already in the mail for 18,000 of it. Right? 18 at the time.
I have a little agita here, just me. I'm Italian, but I have a little agita. And I think if we're going high, I think there's an expectation that we're going to work to that level. I think that was said before, so I'm going to reiterate that. I think we need to bring this number down, and I think we need to perhaps even think about renegotiating some of these fees. I think we really need to take a hard look at it, because this is 142,000. It's not even the end of the fiscal year. Now, I understand that there's stuff that's front-loaded that we won't have to worry about for next year, but that's pretty hefty.
I would propose that we're already coming down, just being at 120.
That's a shame. I mean, we need to do something about this. And
But I think
one
we
of the-
need to budget.
I don't disagree, but I don't think we shoot ourselves in the foot by going to 90 and then not having the money when we need it next year.
Use the
If
budget.
we don't need it, then great.
Yeah, we have to budget for what we expect it's going to cost and then work towards what we want it to cost.
I would agree with that.
So then what is the expectation?
But I think there needs to be, if you're going to reduce it, I think there needs to be some adjustment in the way we go about these matters. Let's choose the first one, general matters. What is entailed in general matters? Who is authorized to contact the attorney? On what matters are they allowed to contact the attorney? I mean, there's some things that the knowledge is right here in this office that we don't need to contact the attorney for. But what constitutes a phone call to the attorney that's 19% of how much we are paying them? 19%. Think about it. 19 outside of all of these from A1 to L. 19% are anything, are us, it's just us taking up the phone, or whoever it is that authorizes, who's authorized to call them. So I think there has to be some measure as far as cutting back. It's not just reducing.
My recollection is it's only like 3 or 4 people authorized to call him.
Who are those people?
So we have
The
a
mayor?
policy and procedure for this. Jen's shaking her head yes. So basically, our question is, are we following our policy and procedure? That would be my biggest question. To answer your question, the mayor, the town manager,
And the chief, maybe?
Planning Commission Chair?
Chief, Marchant, yeah. So there again, I think we go back to,
Chief Planning Commission Chair?
yeah.
I think so.
Well, I didn't call him one time.
Only one time?
I did not call him one time.
Disappointed.
I'm not.
Even the vice mayor can't call him.
I just think there needs to, a budget is a spending plan. You're always going to go over, come under on any budget. I think there needs to be a hard line. If not, if you just keep building in an increase, you're going to spend to what
Yes.
you budget.
Yeah. And to add to that too, if we set it at 90,000, I know that 6 months in the new year, we would be able, because you're giving us great reports. 6 months into the new year, we're able to look at this budget and see, wow, we're 53%. Okay, we're good. But it's going to send off a red flag if 6 months into the fiscal year, we're at 75%. And I think that's going to add to us holding tight and cutting back when we realize month after month or every 6 months where we are compared to. But if we leave it at 120, I think it's dangerous. I don't think we're going to give ourselves the flexibility if we don't cut it back.
I understand where you're going with that. The problem with that is, with legal fees, there's some things you just can't stop. You can't tell them to stop work.
True, sir, but...
Some things you have to do, and we already cut it back to 90.
True.
We were over, we weren't able to stop it. We had to give more money because there was just so much going on that was unexpected this year. Maybe next year it'll be different.
We saw mid-year that it was going awry, and it was a train we couldn't stop.
That's true, but it's...
What are you talking about trains for?
But there has to be checks and balances. And there's no checks and balances. And what I'm saying is that if we have the 90, okay, explain to me what the 19% general matters. How is this curtailed by those 4 persons who can call the attorney?
There again, I think we need to go back, what is our procedure, and is it being adhered to, you know? And then probably more of a check and balance on that. We should be able to enhance this procedure, that maybe we do get a weekly summary, you know, on how much we spent. This is I would agree. I think you put 120, you'll spend 120. It just seems like, I remember the day on this council where we were dealing with, and correct me if I'm wrong, a single attorney's annual amount was in the 40,000, and then we jumped it up to like 60,000, and it was like, oh my gosh. And then we went to like $80,000, you know. So, and we changed firms and everything like that, and it was just a total readjustment. And I can remember when we brought this firm in. But you're right. I think as a vendor, we need to relook at that. We need to look at what we're paying. Obviously, they should have a good pulse on what our town is. I know on the HOA side, we pay a flat fee, not unless there's something that they need to write a legal written opinion on, that it goes more. But the day-to-day running of this town should be pretty well understand, except when we go in these out of areas, these gray areas where we have to go. But
and I agree with Joe. I think we need to go back to them and renegotiate. What percentage of the budget is this number, 142,000?
Councilman Passanello.
You want to keep
Sure.
looking, or you want me to chime in?
About 2 minutes.
I think they'll get back to me.
Okay. Somebody once said, greed is good, competition is good. I think we really need, this is another issue just like the other one we talked about earlier, about the public works. I think we really need to sit down and take another hard look at this one and figure out a way to bring these costs down. And I think we can do it if we go out into the marketplace and see what some of the rates are and compete for these services. We've got nothing to lose by doing it. I think, 142,000, this is just crazy.
But for budgetary purposes, I think we have to keep it here. We've got to advertise the budget. We've got to, you can't say, oh, we're going to do things in the future and budget for whatever that is.
Well, we could make it 90,000, then we could put 30,000 in reserve. I think, one of the things I'm concerned about with this budget is I'd like to see some money in reserve here. And we haven't even gotten to that. We really need to talk about that. And the other thing is, we could even look at our policy. We haven't even spoken about that today, about our general reserve policy at 30%. And frankly, as I said at the last meeting, I've been at jurisdictions where it's 10, 15%. Now, maybe we can reduce it a little bit and give ourselves some additional reserve. So if we put the money there, that'll give us an out if we need it, rather than put a number that's higher that somebody's just going to work to.
Right. I just know it's a different perception when 6 months in the fiscal year, you're seeing 58% of your budget being used compared to 75. It's a different mindset. And at that point, when it's 75%, is when you start tightening the belt.
And we did talk about the fact, again, I'll say the term front-loaded, right? We talked about that and why that's so high this year. And so are we going to have the same costs for next year's? I think we needed to have that analysis to better understand it. Frankly, I don't think so unless, of course, you have unforeseen circumstances. Well, that's different. You always pull to do what you have to do for that.
Mr. Mayor, just for the sake of time, if it would please the council, one of the appropriate ways you all could do this is you could lower it to the 90, and use your general reserve line item, which is a budgeting tool. We went through this. This is not your reserve. This is just your general reserve. Move the additional 30,000 over there and earmark that. We can even notate that that is for future consideration if needed, or legal fees or something to that effect. You can put a note on it, whatever you want to put on it. But basically, you put it over there. That way you have it. You've put it into the budget. Put it, but it doesn't mean you necessarily have to spend it in the meantime, because you're not going to solve the issues that you're raising tonight about renegotiating. And I don't think you want to go for any distinguishable time, taking any chance of not having it.
And then every future report is based on the 90,000.
Where are we at now, Jen? Where do we need date-wise to make all this work?
So we need to advertise a public hearing, just authorize advertising of a public hearing.
And let's consider a special meeting for maybe just passing the budget. I mean, put that in your amendment.
Correct. So we'll do the public hearing June 6th.
Uh-huh.
And it's my understanding you need that to be at 7 o'clock.
Yes, please.
And then I just need you to set another meeting in June to adopt the budget at 7 days later,
7 days after June 6th.
at least.
What do we have as far as the calendar?
We've got the 13th, we've got the 20th, those are Mondays. We've got, you want to do it earlier? I'm going to check like the 16th, or is the 13th okay?
What does our calendars look like?
No, I'm good.
Good for any of those dates?
13th?
I prefer not the 13th, but
Well, we
not-
could do the 16th. It sounds like it was pretty much open.
16th's okay.
Yeah. So 16th?
16th, I'm unavailable.
Oh, okay.
What about the 14th?
I'm available the 14th.
Tuesday, the 14th.
I'm available.
14th?
That's good.
Sound good?
14th, anybody want to check the back calendar just to
I
make
think
sure?
we better just bump whoever.
Yeah, okay, that's fine, okay.
14th,
Yes, sir.
what time?
7.
7 o'clock?
That's the adoption?
Yes, sir.
June 14th.
And 6 for the hearing, okay. So we'll rework these numbers here, I guess send us out a new,
So are we not having a work session at June 6th? Is that, or the public hearing is going to be?
Well, the work session will be at 5 to 7.
I thought I heard 7 o'clock.
7, well, 7 for the regular meeting.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah,
Basically, what the deal is with some schedule changes, we got to have that meeting on June 6th at 7 o'clock. That's going to be the regular meeting. The week before, I think the mayor can address this issue with most of you all. The week before, we typically could go back to doing the work session, but it's Memorial Day weekend, so I've advised the mayor, other than the budget, there's a few other items. I think we can just do a regular meeting starting at 7. Staff will make sure that you are prepared with staff reports the week before.
right, that we'll have it for questions, answers.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
So let me get this straight. On the 30th, there's no work session. We're going to do that on the 6th.
Correct.
Okay.
It'll just be one regular meeting on June the 6th
At 5.
at 5. No, at 7.
7.
There's no work session at 5?
No work session at 7. At 5. Sorry.
Who's on first?
Yeah. It's 7 o'clock.
What?
No work session, no agenda work session the week prior because of the holiday. Yeah.
But we will, yeah, no.
Budget
14th.
adoption will be the 14th. July 1st. All right. Anything further? All right, thank you all very much for your time.
Do we have to motion to adjourn?
Yep.